You think Megalodon was terrifying? Right. You think Leviathan was the top predator of the ocean? Also correct. You think Mosasaurus was unstoppable? Absolutely. But let me tell you a horrifying fact: 470 million years ago, if their ancestors had encountered this creature, they would have only done one thing: pray it wasn't hungry. It was the one life form in that era that didn't need to avoid anything. What's even more chilling is a hypothesis paleontologists have. It was precisely because this creature was so vicious that it forced early fish to evolve desperately, driving faster speeds, stronger skeletons, and smarter brains. Then later, those fish crawled onto land, stood upright, learned to use fire, built smartphones, and started scrolling through short videos. Your intelligence, your bones, your nervous system, part of them, were forced into existence, bite by bite, by this creature. It was your ancestors' most feared natural enemy, and the earliest shaper of human civilization. Its name is Cameroceras. If you think that's absurd, listen to this sound. Does it send a shiver down your spine? And its story is crazier than any monster movie. Let's go back 470 million years. Note, 470 million years. How huge is that number? Dinosaurs only appeared 230 million years ago. Humans are a mere few million years old. Back then, Cameroceras was already the king ruling Earth. At that time, the land was empty, no trees, no grass. Not even insects. All life, all stories, took place in the sea. The most abundant creatures in the ocean were trilobites. Tiny things covered in hard shells, making up 60% of all marine life. They lived on Earth for a full 300 million years, arguably the most enduring life form ever. But they spent their entire lives in fear, because there was something in the ocean that scared them even in their dreams: Cameroceras. The first time you see it, you might freeze, because it looks like a giant conical weapon. A straight, conical shell that gets narrower toward the back, stretching nearly 20 feet long. 20 feet is the length of a medium bus. But that's just its shell. The head and tentacles. No one knows exactly how long they were. Based on modern squid proportions, scientists estimate that the tentacles and head together might have been longer than the shell. That means the monster in front of you could have exceeded 33 feet in total length. So how did it hunt? Here's a detail that surprises many: Cameroceras didn't chase prey. The shell was too heavy and too long. Pursuit wasn't realistic. It chose spots in crevices among reefs. It would hang there, completely still, tentacles dangling loosely at the edge of the crevice like seaweed swaying in the current. No hint of a predator. The trilobite never knew. It crawled slowly along the reef wall, searching for algae, for food, doing what it did every day. It never realized that those seaweed strands had been sensing every vibration of its steps: closer, closer. The next second, tentacles burst out like a dozen chains whipping from the reef gap, latching onto it tightly. Hiding inside its shell was useless. Cameroceras's hard beak would reach in and bite down like industrial shears. The shell shattered on impact. Its feeding was never tidy. Fragments of shell and scraps of flesh scattered around the reef. Then Arandaspis appeared, that tiny thing, only a few centimeters long, covered in bony armor. Was something Cameroceras paid no attention to. It followed behind, picking up scraps, gnawing on leftovers, living fearfully in the shadow of the giant beast. But do you know the most absurd part of this story? That little scrap picker later evolved into fish, evolved into amphibians, evolved into reptiles, and finally into mammals. And into you. Speaking of which, I have to mention a design that I find truly outrageous on nature's part. Cameroceras's shell wasn't solid. Inside it was divided into separate chambers, with a thin tube running through them, called the siphuncle. By adjusting the ratio of gas to liquid in each chamber, Cameroceras precisely controlled its buoyancy and depth in the water. This was a natural, fully automated submarine balancing system, already in place 470 million years ago. Humans didn't build a truly practical submarine until the late 19th century. Nature beat us to it by nearly 500 million years. Alright, now for the cruelest part. Such a powerful creature, how did it disappear 443 million years ago? At the end of the Ordovician, Earth suddenly cooled. The mainstream scientific explanation is Gondwana drifted near the South Pole, the global climate turned sharply colder, and glaciers expanded massively. Sea levels dropped abruptly. The warm, shallow seas where Cameroceras lived vanished. Not gradually shrinking, gone outright. This catastrophe wiped out 85% of Earth's marine species. It's known as the Late Ordovician mass extinction, the second deadliest mass extinction in Earth's history. Cameroceras vanished forever from the fossil record in that disaster. But the story isn't over. Because this next twist is what really gives me chills. Cameroceras died. But two lineages of the cephalopods it belonged to survived this extinction. These two survivors later evolved into all the cephalopods in today's oceans, nautiluses, squid, octopuses, and squid, yes, the squid you eat on the grill. Its ancestors were once the most terrifying beings on this planet 470 million years ago. You eat it with sauce. The descendant of kings, reduced to this. Hard to say whether that's evolution's cruelty or humanity's triumph. One last detail. Many don't know this, but I think it's the most stunning part of the Cameroceras story. Paleontologists have a hypothesis: the existence of giant predators like Cameroceras may have inadvertently rewritten the evolutionary fate of all vertebrates. During the Ordovician, the ancestors of fish were very fragile, exposed skeletons, slow, poor senses. Facing Cameroceras, they had only one path: get stronger, or die. So, the pressure of predation forcibly drove early fish to evolve lighter skeletons, more developed muscles, and more sensitive nervous systems. Later, the descendants of these fish crawled onto land, and after a very long time, stood upright, learned to use fire, built submarines, and began to study the monster that lived in the sea 470 million years ago. While Cameroceras was devouring our ancestors, it was also, bite by bite, forcing us into what we are today. It was our enemy and our shaper. So you see, extinction is never the end. Cameroceras disappeared 400 million years ago. But its genes still swim on your kebab tonight. The fear it imposed is still etched into your bones. A species, after tens of millions of years of dominance, brought a reshuffling of the entire ocean. The disappearance of the strong is never the end of the story. It's where other life truly begins. That you can think today, can feel, can marvel at a fossil. It's not because your ancestors were lucky enough. It's because they were scared enough. You are the answer that made it through. Do you believe in evolution? There's one thing even Darwin himself couldn't explain. It tormented him his whole life. Kept him up at night. In On the Origin of Species, he personally admitted, "This is the strongest objection to my theory. Do you know what it is? For 3 billion years before that, Earth didn't have a single complex animal. But in just 20 million years, arthropods arrived. Mollusks arrived, chordates arrived, 38 entire animal phyla appeared almost simultaneously. 20 million years in geological history is less than a blink of an eye. Darwin never figured it out, even on his deathbed. Scientists call it the Cambrian explosion, the Big Bang of life. But every explosion needs a fuse. And that fuse was less than a millimeter long. Earth's first eyes. Let's first talk about a question you may never have considered. What was life like on Earth before eyes appeared? Before the Cambrian, there was already life in the oceans. Those lifeforms lay on the seafloor, no mouths, no legs. Not even a true head. They were like breathing pancakes, quietly spread across the seabed, living by absorbing nutrients from seawater. No predation, no escaping, no chasing. The entire ocean was as quiet as a stagnant pool. This state lasted nearly 3 billion years. 3 billion years, nothing happened. Then, 540 million years ago, everything exploded. Scientists call this period the Cambrian explosion. In just 20 million years, note, 20 million years in geological time, is barely a blink. Nearly every major animal group on Earth appeared all at once. 103 arthropods, mollusks, chordates. Arthropods, mollusks, chordates. Echinoderms, every major category of animal you see on Earth today. Their ancestors were almost all born within those 20 million years. That's not evolution, that's an explosion. So, what set off that bomb? Scientists argued for nearly 150 years. Even during Darwin's lifetime. This question tormented him, keeping him up at night. In 1859 he published On the Origin of Species and admitted outright that the Cambrian explosion was the greatest challenge to his theory of evolution, because according to his theory, evolution should happen slowly, but the Cambrian fossil record told him no. Life could appear in an explosion. Darwin died without ever finding the answer. But now we've found a highly credible clue: eyes. Before eyes existed, predation didn't exist at all. Think about it, if you can't even see where your target is, how can you eat it? So before the Cambrian, there was almost no true predatory behavior. Everyone was passive, eating whatever drifted by or absorbing organic matter from the seawater. This lifestyle meant there was no evolutionary pressure. You didn't have to run, you didn't have to hide. You didn't have to get smarter. You just had to stay alive. Then, the first pair of eyes appeared. No one knows what creature they belonged to. But the result was catastrophic. Once an organism could see, it could lock onto a target, pursue it precisely, and turn those slow, soft-bodied life forms into food. What could the prey do? Either evolve a hard shell, or evolve speed. Or evolve eyes to detect danger ahead of time. That was the start of an arms race. Once evolutionary pressure kicked in, it was like an avalanche, unstoppable. Predators evolved sharper claws, prey evolved thicker shells. Prey evolved faster speed, predators evolved sharper senses. And just like that, over 20 million years, the diversity of life was forced out by this arms race. Every complex life form you see today is the product of that arms race. Back in those oceans, there was a creature sitting at the top of the food chain called an Cameroceras. Just from the name, you know it's bizarre. Its body looked like an oversized shrimp. But the distance between its two eyes was extremely wide, its compound eyes were highly developed, giving it nearly a 360-degree field of view. Its mouth wasn't a mouth, it was a circular grasping organ made of multiple bone plates, closing like a mechanical claw, specially designed to tear apart prey. It could reach nearly 1 meter in length, making it the absolute ruler of the ocean at that time. In an era when most animals were just a few centimeters long, a 1-meter Cameroceras was like a great white shark in today's oceans, and one of its main prey was the trilobite. Trilobites are the most iconic creatures of the Cambrian and among the most abundant fossil organisms. They had a remarkable structure, compound eyes. A trilobite's compound eye was made up of hundreds, even thousands of individual lenses. Each lens could form an independent image, combining to create an ultra-wide field of view. Even more amazing, the trilobite's lenses were made of calcite. That's limestone. Using minerals to build eyes is almost a one-of-a-kind design. In the history of life, when scientists studied trilobite eyes, they found the optical design was stunningly precise. Some even believe its structure shares the same principles as certain modern high-end optical instruments. 540 million years ago, life built its own optical instruments. Now, let me tell you something I find absolutely mind-blowing. There's a famous site for Cambrian explosion fossils, called the Burgess Shale, in the Canadian Rockies. In 1909, a scientist named Walcott discovered there a huge number of Cambrian soft-bodied fossils. Note, soft-bodied, no shells. The odds of preservation are extremely low, but right there, thousands of Cambrian creatures were perfectly preserved, including an Cameroceras. Hallucigenia, Opabinia, every one of them unlike any animal. Forms that cannot be matched. Those fossils slept in the rocks for 500 million years, waiting for us to discover them, to know them, to read the secrets of that era. 540 million years ago, the moment the first pair of eyes opened, the world saw for the first time. The act of seeing. Before that, life was blind and peaceful. No pursuit, no death, no struggle. But once those eyes opened, peace was gone forever. Sometimes I think that seeing itself is the origin of all suffering. Because of seeing, there was desire. Because of desire, there was competition. Because of competition, we have today's incredibly complex and incredibly wonderful world. Everything we have today. Civilization, art, technology, love, hate, passion, revenge. Tracing back to the source. It's just that 540 million years ago, some little creature opened its eyes. It didn't know what it had done, but it changed everything.